Hey guys, we're now exactly 2 weeks from the first episode of the final season, and in that light, new Game of Thrones footage for Season 8 has been released. As you may have realized, a bunch of this footage we have already seen, but there's some new interesting stuff in there, starting with Tyrion's speech in Winterfell's Great Hall. Tyrion says we must fight together now or die, while in the background we can also notice Dany and Sansa. Dany and Jon with their crews and armies will arrive in Winterfell in the very beginning of Season 8, and as it was expected, the Northerners will not accept her as good as Jon did. It has been officially confirmed for quite a long time ago that Sansa and Dany will have a very tense first meeting, and it was also recently confirmed that other Northern lords will side with Sansa and share the same feelings towards the Dragon Queen. The Northerners will need some convincing to trust Dany. According to Bella Ramsey, her character Lena Mormont is not very happy with the arrival of a foreign queen. So it's not only Sansa who will give some hard time to Jon or Dany, but it's also all the Northern lords and ladies as well, and this right here is the first meeting summoned by Jon Snow upon their arrival at Winterfell. Since the Northerners did not accept Dany very well, Tyrion is pretty much saying they might not like each other, but they must fight together nonetheless, or otherwise they will all die. This speech should bring the Northerners to their senses, and they will sooner or later realize that Dany's armies and dragons are the only hope in this great war. Although the Targaryens might not be the only reason Northerners are upset about, it could also be that Northerners don't like the idea of fighting alongside his brother, Jaime Lannister, whose arrival at Winterfell was firstly teased by the official Season 8 photos, and then confirmed by the trailer. Northerners are not happy about Targaryens and Lannisters in Winterfell, and that's why Tyrion says we must fight together now or die. Next we have Dany standing in front of a fireplace, with her back turned to Jon. The first thing I realized from this clip is that this is obviously an intense meeting between Jon and Dany. At second note, I noticed her battle hair, the full single braid. Looking into details, I figured this must be from episode 4, because they're not in Winterfell here, they're at Dragonstone. Take a look at the props, fireplace, the stone, curves and the metalwork. It's the same thing we already saw at Dragonstone, so now we know they will retreat to Dragonstone after Winterfell falls. Looks like Jon and Dany will have a tense conversation after losing the battle for Winterfell, and since they are at Dragonstone, this clip is likely from episode 4, and it's a post-fight moment, but also seemingly post-Jon's true parentage reveal moment as well. Throughout these past 7 seasons, we all knew that Jon would eventually learn his true lineage. At first we hoped he'd find out who was his mother, and then after a huge twist we hoped he'd soon find out about both, his mother and his true father. He did not learn the truth yet, but since this is the final season we know he will find it out now. Kit Harington teased this about his character Jon Snow. The end of the world might be coming soon, but at least he's in love with somebody and knows who he is, and then comes a sledgehammer. His parentage reveal will be a huge blow to Jon and his relationship with Dany, and it's not surprising. A sledgehammer to Jon will likely come from Bran, or even more likely from Sam. Dany does seem to be upset, and Jon simply doesn't know how to deal with all of this, the Night King being close and him being a Targaryen at the same time. How I picture this scene is, it's after they've learned about Jon's true parentage, but also after they've learned that Dany's pregnant. So they don't know how to feel about all of that just yet, but still they have to make plans. I also like how at this point we all speak about Dany's pregnancy as a fact, without any footage or dialogue confirming it, but after all the season 7 clues, hints and foreshadows, I don't think we even need to wait for it. It might have even been officially confirmed by the showrunners. There's one interview in which Game of Thrones showrunners David and Dan are discussing Dany's potential pregnancy with Kit Harington, an actor that portrays Jon Snow. Kit states Dany says that she cannot have children, and you're likely will see about that, on which one of the showrunners laughed. Regardless of this interview, the show's next big twist, their child, was heavily foreshadowed throughout the previous season multiple times, that Dany's pregnancy became a certain thing. The most prominent one would definitely be Jon's statement on Dany's belief that she cannot have children. Dany said, "I cannot have children," on which Jon replied with, "Who told you that?" "The witch who killed my husband," answered Dany, referring to Mir Mazdur. In case you don't remember, the prophecy took place in the season 1 finale, and the witch said this to Dany: "When the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and the mountains blow in the winds like leaves, when your womb quickens again and you bear a living child, then he will return and not before." Jon replied to Dany with, "Has it occurred to you she might not have been a reliable source of information?" Despite Dany's belief that she cannot have children because of this prophecy, Dany will most definitely be pregnant with Jon's baby next time we see her. The show's next big twist was also heavily foreshadowed in Tyrion's conversation with Dany about her plan for succession, as well as with Jon's conversation with Jorah, in which Jorah did not want to take Longclaw but rather said, "May it serve you well and your children after you." All these clues and foreshadows made us convinced about Dany's pregnancy, and make no mistake, she's definitely pregnant. The new footage also included Beric Dondarrion and the Hound in the midst of the battle for Winterfell against White Walkers. Beric is ready, but the Hound is terrified and in fear of all the fire around him. We have already seen him in this state in Season 7, when Thoros and Beric ignited their swords to fend off the undead beast. Then the Hound froze, and it resulted with the bear fatally wounding Thoros, as well as almost killing the Hound before others killed it. Now during this battle it's 10 times worse. Then it was only 2 flaming swords that made the Hound freeze, and now it's basically the Battle of the Blackwater 2.0 for the Hound. Winterfell is on fire, there are flaming swords around him, and probably flaming arrows flying everywhere around. However, I also think this is going to be a moment the Hound will finally defeat his fear of fire, and actually be of some help for the Starks. Then we have Dany again, this time in the courtyard of Winterfell. This clip is from the Season 8 premiere, it's her meeting all the Starks. Dany is in the ground level of Winterfell courtyard and looking down, and she's a little upset, likely listening to Bran in his wheelchair and he's telling her about the wall, the Night King and Viserion. Bran basically shares the news that the Night King used the dragon to bring down the wall, and it will not take long until they're here. As we all know, Dany knew she lost the dragon, but she did not know the Night King reanimated him, and will basically fight Dany in the future. So this is definitely coming as a huge shock to the Dragon Queen. From this promotional photo we received a few days ago, we know for a fact that Bran will be welcoming Jon Snow and Dany in the courtyard just like everyone else. Next we have the Unsullied raising their shields with dragonless edges. As we all know, dragonless, also known as obsidian, is the key to killing the Night King's army, as along with Valyrian steel it's one of the 2 known substances capable of killing both the White Walkers and their whites. The living will use dragonless in every way possible. A new footage also provided this clip of Jon and Arya being in the Godswood of Winterfell. This could very well be their reunion, and one can only say finally. Arya and Jon have not seen each other since Season 1 when they had close sibling relationship, and they just missed each other in Season 7. And now in Season 8 they will finally reunite. I don't think Arya will be with Sansa and Bran in the courtyard of Winterfell when Jon and Dany arrive. She seems to be in Wintertown at the moment of Dragon's arrival, and also I would like more if Jon and Arya reunite a bit later, without anyone else around them. It's going to be heartbreaking. We also see a new glimpse of Jon Snow fighting during the battle for Winterfell, and lighting some candles in the crypts of Winterfell, but nothing else we could get out of it. Finally we have Varys, Davos and Tyrion and Winterfell standing right next to Dragonglass, surprisingly and shockingly looking up at Dragon or Dragons. These 3 have already seen dragons above their heads quite a lot of times, so the only reason they would look up with a bit of shock would be, number 1, it's not just any dragon, it's the Ice Dragon, the Night King's dragon, or more likely 2, it's Jon Snow riding Dany's other dragon Rhaegal. Since the Night King will arrive at Winterfell in episode 3 and since it will actually be at night, we can say for a fact that these 3 are not looking at the Night King's dragon, but they could be looking at Jon Snow riding Rhaegal, a dragon named after Jon's father Rhaegar Targaryen. In the trailer we see Jon and Dany approaching Drogon and Rhaegal. We know Dany is obviously heading to ride Drogon, and seemingly Jon is heading to ride the other one as well. Before we end this video, there's one more thing that I'd like to discuss, and it's this promotional Season 8 photo. We see Tyrion in Winterfell with boxes full of dragonglass next to him, and that dragonglass is actually being added to She Will Defreeze, which is a defensive anti-cavalry measure. Jon went to Dragonstone not only to meet the Dragon Queen, but also to mine dragonglass that is located over there. With Jon and Dany's arrival at Winterfell, of course they brought dragonglass from Dragonstone to use it in the war to come, and therefore their armies carrying the dragonglass made weapons doesn't come as a surprise. As I already said, the dragonglass is a key to defeating the White Walkers, so the living has to use it in every way possible. As we learned from the trailer, some part of the army of the living will fight the Night King outside Winterfell, and so they need some protection around them. The Unsullied form a phalanx formation, their famous battle tactic, a large group of them fighting in lockstep phalanxes using spear and shield, which in this case has dragonglass on it as well. With this formation, they once defeated an army that was approximately 7 times bigger in numbers. The Unsullied will take a defensive position behind the lines of She Will Defreeze, with dragonglass sticking out of the spikes. As I already said, this defense is often used against cavalry, but the Night King doesn't have any, so this is a little bit confusing. Whites can only remember how to use a sword, but they cannot use bows and arrows or other complex tools, including riding horses. I guess mindless whites could be just running straight into it. Nevertheless, this Season 8 photo is very interesting. In conclusion, this new footage did reveal a lot, but most importantly we now know for a fact where Dany and Jon Snow and the living in general will retreat after losing the battle for Winterfell. They will go to Dragonstone. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe to our channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.